I mean, to me, it's pretty obvious. He's okay. He's all right. Not great, not terrible. But why do you think it seemed like there were more people that either thought he was worse than he really was or better than he really was? Or do you reject that completely?
It's because he put up numbers that would lead you to believe that the team wouldn't win as much with those numbers. It's also, I think, to a lot of fans, there's a thought that he left a certain amount of plays out there that would have gotten them over the top had he made them, and gotten them over the top to get into the Super Bowl last year, gotten them over the top to win the Super Bowl back in 2020. To me, that's really, or the 19 season, that's really where this thing started. We were talking about this a little bit with Guru last week. Like, when did it turn? To me, it turned. It was in the playoffs in 19 when they played Minnesota, and he threw the interception in against Minnesota right before halftime.
Right.
And then Shanahan came out and ran the ball a bunch of times in a row. The defense regained control of the game. They won that game, and then they blew out the Packers with him only throwing 8 times. So there was that, but then he misses the throw to Sanders in the Super Bowl. He wasn't great in the Super Bowl, although I made the case he probably would have been the Super Bowl MVP had they won. He certainly would have been if he hits the ball to Sanders. But it started, to me, there to where it just... He kind of, to a lot of people, he's just not going to be good enough to win a Super Bowl. And this team needs to win Super Bowl. So I think that's the beginning of it. But he had a unique ability to make plays after he made mistakes, which I think helped him and the team win games, even though he was a flawed quarterback in his own right. And most quarterbacks of his talent level don't do that. They just don't win because there are some intangibles in play that Garoppolo has that are hard to account for, but he clearly has them, because if he didn't, this team wouldn't have been nearly as good as they were when he was the starting quarterback.
Exactly. And that's the one thing that I don't think is going to be easy to get around. And I get it. Quarterbacks aren't the only reason a team wins or loses, but you can't get away from Jimmy Garoppolo's record as a starting quarterback, and that number is going to be out there. Those numbers are going to be out there, and they're going to affect Trey Lance.
But I don't think he's necessarily a tough act to follow in the sense that I just don't think there's a lot of 49er fans out there that are looking at it like, well, Trey better do da-da-da-da-da-da, at least going into it. I think for the most part, people think Trey's going to be better.
I agree.
Than Garoppolo, and that they're going to be able to win as much. And I think what we may find is he may be better in a couple of areas. He may not be better in a couple of other areas, at least off the top. The question, though, is going to be, are they still winning at the level that, like, that's the only tough act to follow is, are they not winning as much as they did?
Well, they're probably not going to win as much as they did when Jimmy Garoppolo started. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you think, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but Jimmy Garoppolo's record as a starter was impressive. And you can make the case that the 49ers record was impressive in spite of him. It doesn't, like, that's the part that there's no way Kyle Shanahan and or Trey Lance can avoid.
31-14.
31-14. And let me tell you, like, that's the one thing that it's going to be the theme of the season. They were 31-14 with Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, what happens if and when Trey Lance ain't 31-14? Yeah. Forget how it looks. Like, I'm willing to look at Trey Lance's numbers, and they're worse than Jimmy Garoppolo, but the team's as good. That's fine.
Sure.
Especially because he's such a young quarterback. But, the other thing is, I'm not going to give him credit for having great numbers if they're worse.
No, but I just don't think that there's pressure on Trey going into it because the expectation is he's going to be better. Or if he's not immediately better, he's going to be more explosive and they're still going to win as much. Like, I just feel like a lot of people look at it as if the bar is pretty low. Now
I agree.
It's almost, I guess what I'm getting at is you're going to have to see it kind of fail in a way. And by fail, I mean he does make mistakes, and his numbers are similar to Garoppolo. And maybe every game that the home run plays are not there, and they don't win as much. Like when all of those things happen, like to me, there's so many people that are hell-bent on the fact that this is an upgrade from the jump to where you're going to have to see it not work out, at least initially, before you're going to change your tune. I just don't think people are waiting for, it's, boy, he better be better than Jimmy immediately, or this thing's going to be. I just don't think that's the mindset going into it.
Of who?
Of the majority of the fan base.
I think there's a big part of the fan base that thinks Trey Lance will look better than Jimmy Garoppolo sooner rather than later.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
But those people are not going to be. I think that's why there's less pressure on Trey going into it, is because those people just believe that it's just going to happen.
Right.
Like, how could it not happen?
Well, here's the other question. 888-957-9570. What'd you think of Trey Lance on Friday? And you feeling pretty good about how he looked in the 49ers season. I mean,
like pressure.
But this team's expected to be a playoff team, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, to me, it's pretty simple. Make the playoffs, and that's a good year from Trey Lance and the 49ers.
Yeah.
Don't make the playoffs, it's going to be a disappointing year. To me, it is that simple. And the numbers, I don't care. I really don't care about the numbers as opposed to, because here's why I don't care about the numbers. Because I'm using the same kind of theory in reverse as everybody else did. When Jimmy Garoppolo was not very good, but they won, everybody said, well, they're winning in spite. They're winning in spite of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah,
well, that's crap.
Trey will get credit for that.
Well,
he'll get credit for the things that people didn't want to give Jimmy Garoppolo credit for.
I'm not going to do that. Because Jimmy Garoppolo's numbers were pretty ordinary. So if Trey Lance's numbers are ordinary and they're getting the same success and failure, relatively speaking, he doesn't get more credit than Jimmy Garoppolo then. If they go 10-7 next year, okay, good year. You know what? Looks like Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo are pretty similar, and I get it. They think that Trey Lance is going to be really good in 2 or 3 years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, I think pressure is a byproduct of who's going to be calling you out if you're not. To me, Trey Lance isn't going to have people Kyle Shanahan certainly isn't. I think they've already set the table for this is going to be a process, and there's an expectation that there's things he's going to do better, and there's things that he's going to have to work on and maybe won't be better. I don't feel like there is people lying in wait to say, boy, he isn't as good as
I kind of do.
As good as Jimmy.
I kind of do.
Right, quickly. He of course he better be better than Jimmy eventually by 23, 24, whatever. That's not even what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about right now this season. I just don't think there are people laying in the weeds waiting to be like, you should have kept Garoppolo, or Garoppolo's better for this season, or would have been. I don't feel that. I don't feel it from the media, and I don't feel it from the fan base.
See, that's kind of where I'm coming from, JD. Now I want to be precise here. I get it. It's the start of Trey Lance's career. But the way this has all been set up, the way it's played out, and just hearing the way a big portion of the fan base thinks of Jimmy Garoppolo, I do think Trey Lance, he doesn't really have the pressure. I agree with that. He's just the player. But you know what? Kyle Shanahan, he better be, sooner rather than later, he better be as good as Jimmy Garoppolo. Otherwise, why did you go up and get him? Why did you give up all that for him?
Well, there's a lot of reasons, but the to extend it forward and not look back, it's because you believe he will be better than him at some point down the line. I just don't think you're necessarily believing that he's going to be better than him this year. I think the 49ers feel that they're close enough Like, they're good enough in other areas,
Right.
and the two are close enough in terms that this is the year to make that switch.
Right.
Like, this is the year where if Trey isn't quite where he's going to be, we're still good enough to win, even though he may not quite be good enough or as good as he's going to be, and that's going to be okay because in some ways it's a developmental year. It's kind of like the Warrior thing, right? You want to win and develop. I feel like the Niners feel like this year they want to win and develop Trey Lance to where he's at a certain point now, but he's going to be better by the end of the year. He's going to be even better in future years because it's two different. It's the scoreboard of can you win with him this year versus can he be worthy of the number. Like, being worthy of the number 3 pick is not something that he needs to worry about this year, at least in my mind.
I agree.
But eventually, whether that's next year or I think certainly by 2 years from now, 24 season, he better start, forget about Jimmy Garoppolo. He better be looking like Mahomes and Allen and Stafford and Rodgers, and like he better start looking like those guys or trending toward those guys because those are the types of players that are worthy of the number 3 pick. But I'm not putting on that by any stretch, not putting that on him now.